So a very common question I get asked is how and where should I invest X amount of pounds? Now previously I did do a video on this, but I may actually make this a mini series, especially if you find this one useful. So drop it down in the comments below if you do. But for today's video, I'm going to give you some ways that you can utilise £20,000 if that's all you have available and you want to get involved in property. And the only thing you need to do, other than remember what I said, is smash the hell out of that like button. And of course, any comments you do have, make sure you drop them in the comments below and let me know, as I'll gladly answer as much as I can for you. And of course, timestamps will be running along the bottom as always. So let's get to it. What's going on everyone, my name is Aaron, aka The Anxious Investor, and today's video, as mentioned earlier, is to get you started in property if you only have £20,000 to invest. Now I say only £20,000, but £20,000 is a lot of money, and therefore it's important to ensure that we utilise it to the best of your ability. I mean, the stuff you could buy with £20,000. Now, I actually have done videos on many of the strategies I'm going to talk about today, and I will link these down below if you need more information on them, so please do check them out. But I will also explain some of the scenarios that you could potentially use having £20,000 right now ready to go. So let's begin. Step 1, goals. You need to decide what your goals are. Are you invested in property because you want financial freedom perhaps? Or are you invested in property to have a retirement property one day when you give up your 9 to 5? Or are you invested because you wish to slowly build a portfolio over time? It's really important therefore that you at least know what your goals are in this current time and make note of those. Remember, goals are a little bit like having a sat nav. You need to know where you're going before you start the journey. I should probably tweet that one later. Step 2, strategy. Now you're going to be limited in strategies. You won't be able to necessarily do a HMO or a commercial conversion or even a land project with just £20,000. But what I'm going to run through now quickly and show you how you can potentially profit with that £20,000 and make money from it are some of the strategies that you can start literally today. And also what I'll do is I'll start with the one I feel is probably the least preferred option, and then I'll move on to the best one at the end of the video. So that way it'll hopefully keep you guys watching and it'll build up some sort of excitement maybe. So make sure you stick around. So in fourth place we have buy-to-lets. Now I was kind of umming and ahhing about, can you really do buy-to-let successfully with £20,000? But if £20,000 is all you have available, then you definitely need to be cautious of the fees associated with these types of properties. For example, knowing we can get a buy-to-let with a 25% deposit doesn't mean that that's going to be your only cost. Especially if you're new here, I need you to hear this. You will need to factor in potential stamp duty, broker fees, legal fees, insurance fees, and just in case a contingency should you not have it let out from day one. Going to need to pay that mortgage. Now for that reason, I would have the following costs of monies allocated to the side before you do anything. £500 to £750 for conveyancing fees, £350 to £500 for broker fees, stamp duty obviously depends on the property price and your situation as a buyer, and around £200 for the year for insurance. Now remembering that sometimes you may need a few weeks to get tenants in there, the right ones, you will likely start paying the mortgage within the first month. You can normally choose the date that you want the mortgage to come out for. So therefore, you need to at least have that amount spare as well. And knowing that £20,000 needs to cover 25% deposit and all of those fees I just mentioned, we now need to be looking at houses below the £70,000 mark, as fees can definitely sting you. So we're looking probably more around the £65,000 mark, which is instantly dropped from that initial 80 you may have assumed you could have got. And if we just use a worst case scenario for all the costs involved, let's say £16,250 for the deposit, £1,950 for the stamp duty, £750 solicitor fees, £500 broker fees, £200 insurance fees, £150 for the first month of mortgage if you have an interest only, give or take. I'm probably a little bit off there. It brings you in at around £19,800. Just about giving you enough for some cheap champagne to celebrate when you buy that property. And also you must know that purchasing in a limited company will actually have slightly higher costs as well, especially for your rates. Now, depending on the areas, I would definitely off the top of my head imagine probably rents between 425 and 475 for those kind of properties. Again, that's a random guess, so make sure you do your own due diligence. So you can potentially achieve 200 to 250 net per month. Now, if nothing goes wrong, which let's be honest, is very unlikely, it would take you around 18 months to get your money back, almost 7 years, which again, if you are happy with that, that's absolutely fine. Maybe that is a strategy that you should be doing if you have £20,000 spare right now. But is it the best one? Maybe not. Next up we have in third place, assisted sales. Now I've outlined this process in a video over here, which I massively urge you to check out, as I'm confident it will help you. But costs associated with this would be your renovation costs and potentially the legal agreements and documents that you need, depending on how you're going to negotiate this with the vendor. Now the reason I have this at third is you're kind of limited to the renovation. £20,000, yes, can get you a great renovation, but not the best. And I have managed renovations under £20,000 many times, but to get a more substantial uplift and make more profit, you probably need a bit more money. And I find assisted sales work well when there's definitely a nice margin available to split with yourself and the vendor. So for that reason, that's kind of why I'm putting it at third. But again, remember, if you're on top of your figures, and even if you know you can make maybe £20,000 and split that 50-50 with a vendor, spending £20,000 to give yourself £10,000, are you making yourself a 50% return on your money, is pretty good going, especially if it only takes you a short amount of time. So definitely think about that. Now in second place, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very short announcement to remind you to like the video, please. And we have rent to rent. So many of you have probably heard of rent to rent. It's definitely something that people are trying to sell you courses on. You can learn it here for free. Now rent to rent helps build a cash pot. We did exactly this in our rent to rent business, allowing us to buy this actual house here with the money we generated from it. So it can certainly work. However, I must stress that it is a business and you will likely need to run it just like a business and do a lot of legwork and potentially work around the clock, especially when you're starting out. It's not just a matter of, hey, I'll get this property and throw on Airbnb and booking.com and the guests come in flying. Nobody's coming in flying. And if it was that easy, people wouldn't be selling courses about it, right? However, it can definitely make money, and here are some costs that you would need to allocate from your £20,000 pot towards doing rent to rent. Now I'm going to use Birmingham as an example here, as I understand the area better, and that's pretty much where we do all our rent to rents. So we've now got this £20,000. I've got a cough. And here's how far you can stretch it via the following two routes. If you go through an agent to get yourself a deal, you're going to need to allocate for the rent, the deposit, agency fees, which are variable, and the furniture cost, whether you're going to purchase it outright or lease it. Now if you're going to go direct to vendor, then you need to worry about the rent, the deposit potentially, and the furniture again if you want to rent or lease it. So that's just two particular scenarios. And here are some ballpark figures that I need you to at least factor into your £20,000. Typical rent in Birmingham, £900 to £1,000. Deposit, 4 to 5 weeks of rent. Agency fees, £200 to £350. Furniture and staging. On a 2-bed, you're looking at anything up to £5,000. Now if you want to finance that, it'll cost you between £120 and £180 a month. But the guy you need to go for any of your SA needs is this guy, and I'm going to put a link in the description below. So if you really want to take this on, or you really want to learn this strategy, he doesn't charge you, he may even let you work with him for free or source you some properties, then please do get in touch. Now let's just assume you've used the finance option. You are roughly all in at around £2,500 to £3,000 per SA. Now you won't instantly make your cash back regardless of what people tell you. Most of them are showing you gross income. And as we tend to find with ours, it took 6 to 9 months before we broke even, given the initial cost that we had to put in, and also having bookings slightly cheaper just to get the reviews going in the first instance. Basic business stuff really. And that was just a hard slog that many gurus won't actually tell you about. But let's say you keep some of that aside, then you could easily get yourself at least 3 or 4 to start off with. And once they're moving in the right direction, potentially then have a profitable business that gives you a net monthly positive cash flow. Net monthly? Yeah, I think I said that right. And now that brings us on to the best one. If you only had £20,000, and this is probably what I would do if you're really serious about this game. And for that reason, I put it first. If you want to get into this game, having £20,000 aside for deal sourcing hits the #1 spot for the following reasons. By the way, there's a full video here explaining everything about deal sourcing. Now the first reason is if you like it and you don't want to source it on, and you can recognize the potential maybe to be a lease option when viewing it, or an assisted sale, or even a buy to let, if it's a cheaper property, you can keep it yourself. So all of that stuff I mentioned earlier works for this one. So on your daily adventures as a full-time deal sourcer, you can potentially buy your own deals. Secondly, if you do this well and set yourself up legally and make sure you're compliant, watch that video, and use some of the cash to get around viewings and meeting people and buying coffees and speaking with investors, you can definitely pipeline and make some cash in the future months without much of an expense. So you may actually have some of your £20,000 spare, which is a great thing, because then it's easier to build that pot to start to acquire properties yourself. Now the full costs of these are explained in that particular video, so I definitely urge you all to go check that out. But they'll include stuff like your insurance, which is essentially a professional indemnity insurance, which is required, and I think is roughly around £300 per month. But again, check that video. I'm a little bit out of touch with the whole deal sourcing side. The ombudsman registration or a property redress scheme, you definitely need that again. £200–300 potentially a year. You need to make sure you cover yourself for all of those, and obviously anti-money laundering as well. And you need to set yourself up essentially as a business. So there are a few things that that video will explain. And please note, they're not negotiable, they're necessary. So if you're gonna get into this, please do it properly. Now, when knowing how much to charge for a deal is very much a highly sophisticated exercise requiring a huge amount of skill. Stick with me. You're simply going to look at the ROI or profit you're presenting to the client. You're then going to turn your head ever so slightly to the left, lick your finger, put it in the air, and just make up a figure. That's pretty much what people do. It's literally a plucking from air exercise. There is no actual science to it, but hopefully you utilize some common sense in your approach, especially when you're approaching investors and you're just starting out, because you don't want to get a bad rep from the start. People will simply ignore you. And that, my friends, is that. If you found it useful, please do drop a like, please do drop a comment down below. And of course, now I think it's time for some bloopers. I don't know if there was that many. Well, there's definitely one there. I don't know if there's that many today. Have an awesome day, guys.